you just give a short introduction about yourself? You've been in the business a long, long time.
It's so long, it's difficult to do a short introduction.
All right.
But I will. The long one's more fun, but this is the short one. I've been in the business 37 years, 12 years as a record company executive for Polydor in London, and 25 years in music publishing.
Wow, that is a long time. All right, we're going to jump right into it since you're a music publishing expert. I'm sure people are really interested in publishing. It's a really important revenue stream at this point in the industry. So, in your view, what is the current role of a music publisher? How involved are you in the A&R process?
It's really interesting. You know, I think the role of the music publisher today is the same as it ever was. To quote a famous band, Talking Heads, it really hasn't changed. It is about being there at the beginning, at the start of the creative process, finding people who will write and develop music, and then looking at ways and working with those people to see that music come to the world, come to the public. We've been a B2B company for a business, not company, but B2B business for a long time. We don't deal directly with the fans, but we find music and find people to create music whose music will appeal to fans. So it's a very specialized creative part of the business. If you are a music publisher, a real music publisher, you have to understand all parts of the business. You can't be good at one thing. You have to be good at lots of things, at least competent at many things. You have to understand administration. You have to understand what your writers' problems are, whether they're in administration or creative. You can't say, I'm only a creative person or I'm only an administrative person, because then you don't solve the problems for your writer. You have to understand enough to ask the right questions.
Right, and let's talk about the A&R process, because I know that you have a big role in that. Maybe explain your role in the A&R process, how you work with your writers.
I think everybody works in A&R in a music publishing company. It's very interesting. I think it's slightly different. You know, looking back on my years in the record business and music publishing business, there's a certain difference in the way the A&R structure works. And in music publishing, it's more fluid. And I encourage people in our company in Sydney that they're all in A&R, whether they work in administration or whether they work in synchronization, whatever area they're working in. Please, if you find something that's interesting, bring it to us. Because everybody's a music fan or they're not there. So everybody, to some extent, is in A&R. And the ultimate A&R person, of course, is the public. So I think we're all in A&R. So yes, I enjoy that part of it. I enjoy it as much as any other part of it. Probably enjoy it slightly more, if I'm honest. Even if I do it, slightly less. And I think that's a factor of age. The older you get, the less directly you're involved in A&R. And I think that happens naturally. You end up running companies or running people who are working on a day-to-day basis in A&R. But you never lose your interest in it.
Right, okay. And I mean, maybe since you've risen in the company, you're not an A&R in every day, but let's talk about the people underneath you. I mean, how heavily involved in it, shaping songs and stuff like that?
We're very lucky, and you know, I moved to Sydney a couple of years ago. I was based in London for all of my career up until then. And in the Sydney office, we have a studio on the floor next to me. So I'm talking to young writers and producers all the time. And there is an involvement. There is naturally involvement. You talk about things and say, what about, you give ideas, you have a discussion. If you're interested in music, you have an opinion on music. Everybody does. And I love that involvement. That day-to-day involvement is fantastic. It's very special. So yes, I do get involved with our writers that come through the studio. And when I travel to the offices around the world, I talk to their writers.
Right. Great. Well, I mean, I think the writers in the room will appreciate that, and it's a crucial part to meet the writers and actually, interact with them. Are there current writers or artists that you're excited about?
There are. There are always writers you're excited about. I mean, otherwise you'd probably stop working in the music business if there weren't people creating music that made it very exciting to get up in the morning. And I know Jasper mentioned something this morning about that spoon in the cornflakes moment, or whatever it was, however he described it. I'm not sure. I don't have cornflakes for breakfast. But I get that feeling. You know, when you hear a new song, when you hear something by somebody that you hoped they would be that good. Because these are things we're hearing before they're recorded, for the most part. These are the demos, these are the songwriters' ideas. When you hear something that good and that exciting, that's when the spoon falls into the cornflakes. And that is what drives you on. And some of the people we're working with now are very exciting. There's one in this room, I think, at the moment, who's from Singapore, but based in the US, Tat Tong, is doing some amazing things. And I think one of the things I want to talk about, if I can, just a couple of minutes,
Sure.
is about the writers in this region who are working in other regions as well. We're seeing this global effect of the music business, which in a company like Universal, where we're in 44 countries with 55 offices, we're working all the time to give our writers global opportunities wherever we can. But Tat Tong is working as part of a duo, actually, a production team called the Swagonauts in the US. They worked with Demi Lovato, with Luis Fonsi, with Troye Sivan, with JJ Lin.
Wow.
This is a really exciting, and he's from Singapore, and this is very, very exciting. There are writers. We signed a young writer who, at 14 years of age, Rule in Australia.
Wow.
Long before he signed a record deal. He's now signed a record deal direct to RCA Records in New York for a very, very big amount of money. And it's seeing someone from Australia going straight to the US market. They already see the potential there. There's a writer signed to the Hong Kong office, Peter Cam, that I want to talk about. Now, Peter is a different sort of songwriter altogether. And he's written a musical which is going to open on Broadway in 2019, in January. And it will be the first Broadway musical that's sung in both Mandarin and English at the same time in the show. This is really fantastic news. These are really exciting developments. You see these sort of developments. I don't know if anybody saw the K-pop presentation earlier. Danny
Lee. Yeah.
Danny was talking about Blackpink, and I just want to say this again. It is fantastic what that group has done, and now getting the chance to collaborate with Dua Lipa on her next album.
Right.
I understand it's coming out in October. This is very exciting. We're seeing this K-pop explosion, the development, and now working with writers from all around the world who are interested in doing this. And I want to talk about an Indian writer as well, Anushka. This is another fantastic development story. Only 2 singles into her career. She's now on. She's got records coming out in the UK as well as in. It looks like the deal's going to be set for America as well, but she's going to be in the UK as well as India. She's just gone on to the A-list at the BBC Asia with her second single. It's a wonderful moment. You look at these things and you say, what is it that's success? Well, it's all different things to all different people at different stages in their career. And to have something like that happen in London when it's your second ever single release is quite fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, the music industry is changing. I think everybody's aware of it. The cross-pollination, the spread of different musics and different writers from around the world. I think it's fantastic as well. And, the Broadway show that you mentioned, what is it called? Shimmer?
Shimmer. Yeah,
Shimmer,
that's right. Yeah. It's very exciting.
Very exciting. Yeah, I think it's good to get the name out there so people know.
Thank you.
Yeah, Shimmer.
We didn't plan this earlier.
Yeah. Opening in January on Broadway. Yeah. I want to ask you, though, also about the other way. I think that you bring a lot of writers in, particularly from Scandinavia or just from all sorts of different territories, to write for Japanese artists, to write for K-pop artists, and the experience that they have may be somewhat different than working in their home territory. Maybe you could talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are looking at Asia, a lot of songwriters from around the world, and saying, well, this is a real opportunity for me. I could become involved in this area. And of course, there is a big opportunity. There is a tremendous opportunity, but there are great songwriters in Asia. So you have to be better, and you have to write songs and be prepared to do things the way it works in those markets. You can't say, I'll do it the way I do it, and of course everybody will love that. And if you go to Japan, for example, there's a very different music business than there is in the US or the UK, and where the business is very much controlled by the management companies. that songwriters give away their rights to management companies, and that a co-writer will be expected for a big artist in Japan to give up at least 50% of the song to the local lyric version. Now, these are normal ways of doing business in Japan. Sometimes for people coming from overseas, this seems strange, it seems harsh, it doesn't seem right. And it's part of what I mean about you learning about the business first before you try and decide you want to go and work there. It may be the right thing to do, it may not. We have a handout for all writers going to Japan. We actually send them, this is what will happen, this is how it will work. Think about it. If you're happy with this, then we'll try and set up co-writing sessions for you. But understand it works this way.
Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic advice because especially Japan and also Korea, I mean, they do things in their way and no one writer is going to come in and say, you need to bend to my will. It's just not going to happen, right? So they need to be aware of how things are done and they need to accept it, right?
Absolutely. I mean, there are plenty of very good songwriters in Korea and Japan. And if you want to break into their world, you have to become part of their world in all aspects of that.
Right, right. I think it's really fantastic advice. And, you know, there's, as you mentioned, there's a huge amount of opportunity in those markets. It's not like there's no opportunity, but you're going to have to accept things the way they are. I mean, a lot of writers sometimes don't believe that they have to do that, but you better believe it. If you're going to go to Japan or Korea, you have to accept the way things are done there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's move on to royalty collection. How do you feel the state of royalty collection is right now in different markets around the world? It's a very complex topic.
Yes, this really is a complex topic. And what we're really talking about is the efficiency or otherwise of collection societies. You know, the collecting societies are better or worse in some territories than others. And in this region, there are some very good ones. I mean, I think APRA, for example, are first class in Australia. I think JazzRack are a very strong collection society in Japan. Some of the other collection societies are less efficient, and you do wonder, you know, whether we really need 180 different databases. If there are 180 collection societies, why are we replicating this same activity 180 times? Why are we incurring the cost 180 times? All this is being paid for by songwriters and by songs. And it's really a shame that we can't find a better way to do this. I think one of the advantages of digital is that we've at least, as publishers, been able to perhaps herd some collection societies. I'd love to think they would do this willingly, but probably not initially, but into working in regional groups at least, so that we have been able to set up regional structures, which means that there are cost savings that flow straight through to songwriters wherever they occur. I would like to think there could be more of that. I would love to see a world where we were looking at, you know, something like the global airline booking system, where you could actually have, I mean, I worked for a long time on something called the Global Repertoire Database, and I promise you I'm not going to make a pitch for that now. That failed because a lot of people wanted it to fail, a lot of self-interest, but it was the right idea. The fact that we should be able to have a database of the world's music and know what it is. It isn't different, by the way. It's the same in every country.
Right. Well, actually, I want to go down this, maybe something of a rabbit hole, but I want to go down it a little bit because on this stage, people have talked quite a bit in the past, I don't know about this year, but in the past about a global database based on the blockchain. So this is kind of a hot topic, right? Blockchain. But it seems like it's really, really hard thing to accomplish. Do you think that we'll ever get there? One database for all music on the blockchain in the world, and it would make things so much easier, right?
Technically, of course, it's very simple to do it.
Right. Right.
Politically, I don't know that there's a will,
right,
or that there's any chance of us succeeding in the short term. But certainly, it's certainly possible to do.
Right.
I just don't think, having spent too long trying to do it a few years ago, I don't really want to go back there myself.
Right.
It took me away from the music for too long.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, it's kind of a rabbit hole, but this is the difference between theory and practice in the music industry, right?
Yeah.
It would be such a benefit for nearly everyone to have a globalized database where everyone could log on and see exactly who wrote what song, exactly who controls the rights. And it's amazing that that's not possible today, but it's so hard to accomplish it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that metadata, just following that up a little bit, has improved the royalty collection or not? I mean, digital is pretty much in place everywhere now, so.
Yes, I think it has. And I think companies outside of the collecting societies who are involved in the music business have done a huge amounts to create a better place in terms of data. And I mean music publishers and I mean DSPs themselves. There, on both sides, there seems to be a lot of movement in many cases to provide better information.
Right. Just staying on royalty collection just for one sec, are there issues in APAC that you don't think other regions face, or think it's pretty much an even playing field at this point?
There are differences between countries within APAC. You know, as I said, Australia and Japan are probably pretty efficient, and other countries maybe less so. But comparing them to other regions of the world, certainly APAC is not as bad as some territories in terms, or is better, should I say, let's be positive.
Right.
Is better than some other continents in terms of royalty collection.
Right. And just, do you see any, in the future, do you see it improving, or do you think that we're pretty much at a stasis on that?
I certainly don't see it improving dramatically in the short term, but I think in little steps it will improve. People will demand to see an improvement in some areas, and you know, I mean this, and this is going to come from songwriters and publishers, the people who want to see an improvement will actually start to make a difference.
Right. And I mean, it's just maybe my opinion, you'll see if you agree or not, but I feel like writers and people who are rights owners are just much better informed these days than in the past, so they know what their rights are, they know what is due them, and that's the biggest step to collecting your money, is to actually having the information.
Yeah, absolutely. They're certainly better aware. They are aware now of where their music's used all over the world. Fans tell you. You know, one of the beautiful things about fan sites, or artist sites, and their interaction with fans is they say, hey, saw your song on television here, you know, or heard your song on the radio here and somewhere else in the world. And they'll say, well, I haven't got any royalties from that country.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's sort
Might
of a
want to
wake-up
look into
call,
that.
you know, and you go, you'll investigate, and you go, well, actually, they don't sample those radio stations, or whatever the reason is, but you find a reason for it. But
Right.
eventually they will. They'll go, okay, there is a need to do this. There's, you know, and we eventually, in small steps, will drive that problem. It won't ever go away, but it will get better. I mean, it has, various different things have to change at the same time. I think in terms of what we're seeing in terms of the business side, at least music publishing, you're looking at a tremendous improvement in royalty accounting and access to information. You know, we have something, Royalty Window at Universal. It's an online portal. Other publishers do things similarly. This is a new step in the last few years. It's because of the age we're in now. It's a fantastic advantage to writers, and they can see what's coming, where their income is coming from, and they can ask the questions that they probably never would have had the time to ask.
Right, yeah, no, I'm really glad that you said that, because I do think that things are getting better for royalty collection. There's more information out there. It's easier to access because of, you know, digital. And the takeaway there for writers is know your rights, know what you're due. And each territory is different, so it's not just one answer. You need to have an answer for each territory, and oftentimes you need to research it yourself to find out exactly what you're due.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, I think you really do need to know the business you're in. And I think this sort of event is wonderful. And I hope there are lots of songwriters in the room. I love events where there is an opportunity for the business to talk to the musicians and songwriters and artists themselves, and hopefully tell them a little bit about what's going on the business side, so we can give back a little of that information. I think it's really important. And if there's, by the way, I'll be around afterwards if there are any songwriters who want to talk about this. I'll be happy to take it up afterwards. I really think it's one of the things we need to do. We need to make it as open and the involvement as close as we possibly can.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, if there's one revenue stream in the music industry that's evolved for the benefit of the people who are actually supposed to receive the money, it's royalty collection. I mean, it's really changed dramatically from 50 years ago, from 30 years ago, even from 15 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think if I look at the companies I've worked for and the way it was, and the card index system at the record company in the 1980s,
Right.
In our royalty department, to where we are now with royalty window at Universal, this is a huge transformation in just my working career.
Right, it's like the difference between a crank-up car and
Yeah.
A piston engine.
Yeah.
Let's go back to APAC for a second. Are there some developing markets that are really exciting for you these days?
Yes, there are. I mean, you'd have to say the APAC itself is very exciting. I love this region. I've worked with people in this region for 25 years as a music publisher, and it's wonderful to be able to say that for most of that time there were two music markets in the top 10 music markets in the world, Japan and Australia, from the APAC region. And this year there are 4. There's Japan, Australia, Korea, and now China. And this is very exciting. Looking at what's happening with this region, where it's suddenly 4 of the top 10 markets in the world are in APAC. I'm looking at China coming in to the top 10 for the first time. And of course, China, you might say, well, it's in the top 10. Maybe it's not a developing market anymore. I think China is a developing market because China won't be top 10. China will be top 5. China might even be top 2. It's all going to happen. It's going to be in time. And it's not going to happen tomorrow. But what we're looking is China is still a developing market because although it's in the top 10, it's going to go much higher. And I think beyond that, I'm looking at markets. I mean, you can't avoid Taiwan and as a repertoire source for the Chinese market, or Korea with K-pop as a repertoire source for the world. These are really important markets. And then I look at India, which is so exciting. I look at the size of this market, the potential in this market, the fact that it's so music-based as a market. And you say that, well, within the next 5 years, India will surely be in the top 10 markets in the world as well. And we'll have 5 countries in the top 10 that are from this region. And maybe just because it's a big population, and I think it's kind of an interesting market because you look at it and go, it's got so many issues as a music market at the moment, but everybody there is trying to solve them. Then I'd say Indonesia is a market we should look forward to seeing become an important player in this region.
Without a doubt. I mean, Indonesia's got such a huge population and the industry is growing very quickly. Let's just flip it back to China for a second. Everyone, of course, is really excited about China. We're going to have a presentation on this stage where I think people are going to argue that China's not going to be top 2, it's going to be top 1. A lot of people believe that anyways. It's very possibly true. But I think that royalty collection and rights collection in China has been an issue in the past. How is it these days? How do you see it, and how effective is it, the actual collection?
Well, one of the things that's improved the collection is digital. I mean, because it's such an important digital market, and because there are big digital players in China, we're seeing better royalty collections direct from those digital services than we ever saw in the business before. And that will probably force the rest of the business to improve its royalty collection as well. It may take some time. There are other, we don't have to mention them, but there are other pressures in China which may mean that takes a bit longer. But certainly digital is leading the way forward, and there are improvements. And it's one of those things. It reminds me of, I think it's Marvel Comics actually, where it says, with great power comes great responsibility. And if there is great market power in China, then perhaps eventually we'll see great market responsibility from all the players as well.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you mentioned that because I think it's true. I think the the streaming services in China have been instrumental in making the collection actual thing. So we're going to give a big shout out to Tencent and NetEase and Baidu and Alibaba because I think they've really changed everything in China, and it's, now it's an actual collection market where before, royalty collection before, those things didn't really exist.
I think that's absolutely right. These companies have really changed the way it works in China, and not always, I think, we obviously realize how big these companies are, how important they are on a global level, not just a Chinese level. But the fact that they've had to do this sometimes without it being perhaps the most politically popular route to go in China, the fact they've forged ahead and developed these businesses is fantastic.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And as I say, there's going to be a lot more on China on this stage.
Oh, yeah.
People are very excited about it. We just have a little bit of time left. How do you see the music publishing evolving, let's say, in the next decade or even 2 decades?
Well, I remain very optimistic. This is a business that's unique, probably, for the people in this room. Music publishing has existed for over 200 years. Music publishers as companies. Record companies are about 100 years, so they're basically the new kids on the block. So you can imagine how we think about digital services. They're babies in this business.
Infants.
We have a company, part of Universal Recording Music Publishing, which was the first music publishing company ever in the world, started in Italy about 220 years ago. Music publishers have been at the forefront of creating music for 220 years. I don't expect that to change. I expect that to be part of what we do going forward and part of this next 10, 20 years. A very important part. We have always licensed our rights. I expect that to continue. We have always been happy to deal with any new technologies. And the new technologies for us, when we were issuing sheet music at first, were the film business, the radio business, the television business, the record companies, the audio-visual business, the satellite TV business, and now the digital business. And what's interesting, we've licensed them all, and they're all still going. And they're still as important in their own right as they ever were. And when there are 2 or 3 more new businesses beyond digital, whatever happens next, because there will always be what happens next, we'll be licensing them as well. So I have no doubt as music publishers, we'll continue to do what we've done for the last 200 plus years, which is work very closely with people who create music. The creators are the most important thing. The channels come and go. The distribution channels come and go. They're important to us for the reasons that they distribute music. But they're not as important as creating the music. That's the essential part of being a music publisher.
Right, right. And so just to focus attention on the present day, so you don't see any conflict with music online and royalty collection?
No.
Yeah.
No, none whatsoever.
You think
I think you move forward, you improve, you aim to get better, you aim to improve all the things as you absorb and work with new technologies and get the music to the market in the way it wants it, and you find a way to pay your songwriters.
Right, to collect the royalties. Well, I think that's a perfect place to leave it. Thank you so much. That was great talk. Everybody, Andrew Jenkins, Universal Music Publishing.